It's kind of in there. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bink. Bink. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. There's no- Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Yeah, you. Oh man, I am full. Sausage. Mm. Too much food, too close to doing stuff like this every time. And didn't we just say last week that we weren't gonna do that? That we were
Just
gonna
on Wednesday.
eat?
There you go. Thank you, Wendy.
I remember that.
Oh well. All right, well, Hanukkah diwai the joke. So when you see us, Nyari, gazita on Zrio, you just go and nudging and just going to start on that running. Written order, the Grunga Garia Gessu, yet the sort as Tanka Garako, yet in the stars you Hunzagi, then a Guegus cut and Ganugre. Written order, the Kundun Hetzerat Gawis, so here, and it Kundun Hetzerat Gawis, and a Guides and Egan Yat Regated on a Guego or Quadri or Nukasu. Written order, the Yeti Sota Gunhan, not the headstone, I'm going to go here at the Hawakway. I don't get again her dumb down on Hetzer because it's Stasser and Neganugwe. Dumb down on Hetzer and Asset Nigot Dard again, Neganyaga Haga, her the Nato, no, not Roni, don't know, risk Revagi. Then dumb down on Hetzer, a Guego on a Gorda Guyana, that's it, a go on the Scana. Dumb down on Hetzer and Ori Wheel, Curry, what body shoots, but now that's a Stasser and Guyana one and they can't go real. So, as you know, every time that we get together for anything of importance, meeting, council, ceremony, we always have to carry out Hondagari Wadekwa first. This is where we identify and give thanks to the things in creation that have created us and the things we need to continue to sustain us. And so we always begin by giving our thanks to the great spiral of creation. That when you look up into the nighttime sky, you are not looking into cold, dark, empty, lifeless space the way that non-native science would lead you to believe. No, instead, you are looking into the living, vibrant body of our great mother, the Sky Woman herself. And so we give thanks to her, Sky Woman, as it is she who has given us spirit. From there, we give our thanks to the beating heart of our Mother Earth, to our grandmother Moon, it is she who regulates the flow of the lifeblood in all things. And so we give thanks to her, our grandmother Moon, as it is she who has given us blood. From there, we give our thanks to our Mother Earth, regardless of what color you are, what language you speak, where you were grown out from our Mother Earth, or what you imagine divides us. We all come from the same family, from the same mother, from the same body, making us all related together, all relations to each other, all sisters, brothers, all relations. And so we give thanks to our Mother Earth, as it is she who has given us body. From there, we give our thanks to all the women, from the newest born baby girl to the eldest grandmother, as they carry the sacred title of life giver into the world and are to be honored and respected as such. We give thanks to them, for in this world, they give us purpose and direction. From there, we gave our thanks to the power, the energy that flows between all things, and the life-giving force that perpetuates all these things, all different strains of life, the mothers in each strain. So the mothers of shrubs, the mothers of worms, the mothers of birds, the mothers of everything. And so we give thanks to them, the mothers in all strains of life, as it is they that perpetuate the vastness, the diversity of Sky Woman's dream. From there, we give our thanks to all the medicines and all the shapes, all the waters and all the medicines and all the shapes and forms they come in. And this is to remind ourselves that we are made 100% of water. And so we are medicines to our friends, our grandparents, our family. They are medicines to us. we are medicines to each other. And so this is, we must remind ourselves of this on a daily basis so that we are not putting out bad vibes, like bad medicine into the world, that we are constantly aware that everything that we are doing is medicine, and therefore that we are not going to release any bad into the world, just good medicine. From there, we give our thanks to our ancestors, and we ask, carry the good mind, and we ask them to help us to return our mothers back to their natural seat of authority within all our nations so they can manage all our people properly once again. This is to basically to look from where the world is now, and anybody can assess the world and say the world is in bad shape. We know that we were once in good shape. So we know that where we are now, there's no future in it. So it's not an advancement in the direction we are going. It is an end. It is a dead end street. So the direction we are going collectively as humanity, this is a dead end. If you think that we came out of nothing, then to end up destroying everything, to end up with nothing, then we are not advancing. We are actually going backwards. We are reversing. And so there is an inversion in the thoughts and minds of all 8 billion people on the planet now, where everybody is believing, thinking that they're going that way, or one direction, advancing, when they're actually going the opposite direction, when we're actually devolving, digressing, returning the life back to what existed before life came into being. What existed before life came into being? We can't even comprehend that. It's incomprehensible. Nothingness, from where we are, no matter what anybody's going to say, it's impossible for you to comprehend nothingness because you are something. And no matter what you can think, you cannot imagine the vastness of nothingness. And so we are truly, collectively, as a species, going in a negative direction. We are devolving. We are going in reverse. We are reversing the life manifestation process. So we ask our ancestors to guide us, to help us in these things, to help us to return every wampum within the great law of peace back to the hearts and minds of the people, to return peace, the true meaning, the function of peace, power, and righteousness back to the minds of the people, to return the balanced mind leading to the good mind. And again, as always, if there's anything that is left out, then it is for you to put in its proper place. But to identify, or just to expand a little more, I mean, is to that once we are giving thanks for all the things in creation that have created us, like it said, we need these things to continue to sustain us. So we identify these things. It's not like as if that's a thing of the past. That's a thing of constant renewal. And so there's a responsibility that we then have to these things. Is it a matter of giving thanks to these things for creating us and needing them to continue to sustain us? The purpose of a Honda Gari Wadekwa is to center oneself and to balance oneself within the environment in which we live. So you identify all the things there, you give thanks for them as to what gave you life and that you need them to continue to sustain your life. So then it puts you in an equilibrium. You're giving thanks for what created you and what you need to continue to sustain you. And so you find yourself right in the center point of a scale of the past and the future. You are in the present, and it is you, each generation, that must balance out our past to ensure that we have a future. Because as science identifies that energy in all things, like they say, if something dies, it doesn't truly die because its power, its energy is just conveyed, transferred into another form or into another thing. So that energy that is in that thing, when that thing dies, of course, that energy continues on. It's conveyed into something else or evolving into something else. And so this means then that where we stand in the middle at the pivot point in the middle of the scale, that it is we that have to balance past, present, and future. Every generation is faced with the greatest responsibility, the responsibility of maintaining this mechanism. I'll say it's more understandable to people like this when they understand that, oh, our Mother Earth, they just think whatever they think about it. They don't think of it as a mechanism to life, the mechanism to what gives you your thoughts, your dreams, your desires, your loves, your happiness. This is a mechanism. It's a mechanism for manifesting dreams. So our Mother Earth is a mechanism for us to manifest our dreams, our happiness, whatever it is. And as you know, that if a person is carrying the bad mind, then they'll affect bad medicine into the world and will cause a bad or a negative human experience. Now, when we look at how many billions of people there are in the world, well, the majority of people might say, well, they're having a good human experience. But the reality of when a person, an individual is committing suicide or their life is depleting, it's very limited to the happiness that you can experience. It's relative to your circumstance of what the process that you're in. So you're dying, so your happiness is relative to that. It's not a happiness that would exist while you are living, while your perspective of life is of living and everything that you are doing is for living. But when your mind is committing suicide, you're not thinking about living, you're thinking about ending the living process. And so this responsibility that each of us have, that every single being, ever since the beginning of time, that responsibility lies upon your shoulders, my shoulders, our shoulders, as to the level of the quality of life that the faces yet beneath the earth will come to experience because of us. So you just think about this right now. How good is our experience? And whose fault is that? Why are we not having the best experience that we could have? Whose fault is it? Well, it's a conglomeration of generations, all making wrong decisions that are so tiny, so small, that in the incremental adjustments where they're making these decisions in their lifetime, in 1 minute, it's undetectable to the individual to be able to see the long-range outcome of that one tiny little decision. And because of religion, locking people's minds into, well, you only exist within 60, 70 years that you're alive for, and after that, kaput, you're dead, you're done, there's no transfer of energy for you, you're just finished. So this locks people into a false way of thinking as to that you live for 70 years. So everything you're doing it within a short time frame of 70 years. When the property that we're on, that we live on, some of you have been here, you've seen the trees around and this and that. Well, every tree that was here when we moved in, it was all thorn trees. Had to cut down every thorn tree, uproot, dig up the roots to make the soil good, and replant other good, strong, healthy trees that we wanted. So what you see, those of you who have been here, the pines in the back, when I planted those, my mother had just passed. This was in 1989, and they were just saplings like this. And the intent was to be carrying out the ceremonies, singing the songs underneath those pine trees. And so this, in my perspective, my outlook, this was not in my lifetime. It would not be in my lifetime. It would be in my sons or my grandsons or my grandchildren's time or the next generation. I did not see that as happening within my time, because just
the rate of which, trees grow and the different trees that were planted. Well, I just figured that that would be after I die. But these trees have really taken off and they've really taken root, and they're almost the full experience. What I expected, what I had in my mind when I planted them, is where we're at now. So it's like the dream of it, of how it would come to fruition. In my mind, it was generations. So I prepared for generations. I prepared to enjoy something generations down the road, not in my 60 or 70 years, not within that time frame. Because if I do everything in a 60 or 70 year time frame solely for within that time frame, then I am not living the human experience. I'm living my own individual experience. And your own individual experience, to have that, you have to be pulled out of the loop of the whole human experience, which means generations after generations. For you to be locked into just 60 or 70 years, you're pulled out of that. And this is what religion has done to the entire world. It has locked your mind into a lie of time, where you cannot slip back out of that and get back into the real cycles of creation, because you're stuck in time. And anybody, no one will understand this until you start keeping time by Grandma Moon. Once you start keeping time by Grandma Moon, then you will see that Gregorian time, which everybody's living by, even though you don't think about it, just the 24-hour day is Gregorian time. What we're in right now, daylight savings time, this is Gregorian time. When you live by Gregorian time, there is nothing real, nothing, because none of it is connected to the real cycles of our Mother Earth. So you start observing Grandma Moon, start keeping time by that. Tell your friends. Or what I found out this year is when people said it was my birthday, I says, this was the first year. No, it wasn't. We went and we looked for my real birthday, and my real birthday, I forget, I think it was 9 days off or something like that. Because my real birthday was on a moon. But anyways, my birthday was off from Gregorian time, saying September 3rd. No, I was not born on September 3rd. I was born on the new moon. Was it I forget now, was it the new moon or the full moon? I forget, it was one of the moons anyways. This is the kind of thing that's easy to go back and check though, but it's just to identify that when you keep time that way, in the natural way, you're going to see that it does not compute with Gregorian. And you will find that it's not that it doesn't keep up with Gregorian, it's that Gregorian is a complete lie. It's not based on time at all. Because just take, for instance, daylight savings time. Well, then that shows you that your 24-hour period, or the way that you measure time in a day, is not consistent. It's adjustable, not to a cycle of creation. It's adjustable to when men say, okay, it's time to put the clock back, or time to advance it. So Gregorian is a complete lie, and it has you completely pulled out of the natural rhythms of the cycles of Mother Earth, of how time is actually recorded within creation. So time is recorded within creation from not the rotation of our Mother Earth. No. Everybody, this is the Gregorian stupidity. 24 hours a day, 24 hours for the earth to rotate one time. That's not time. That is not time. Time is the Earth's magnetic field leaving the South Pole, traveling across the surface of the Earth, picking up everything there, and then coming back in at the North Pole. That is time. It has just picked up the time there. And so the time in which it takes whatever we would call that, part of the magnetic field, a single cell within the magnetic field, from the time that it takes to leave, travel upon the earth, record all of that, and come back in, come back out, that's the cycle. How long is that? Do we have any kind of instruments to measure that type of cycle? I'm pretty certain that we could pinpoint precisely how long it takes for the magnetic field to make that circuit. I would bet you anything that it is the equivalent of when you extrapolate, ratio it out, your body, your time to the scale of Mother Earth. I would bet you it would take the same amount of time that it takes for your blood to pump out of your heart through your arteries and to come back in to your heart. I would bet you it's the same amount of time, just ratioed out. So we could extrapolate easily from a minute, a single hour to a day to a year. So these things are easy to determine. Not right off the top of our heads, of course. We got to do a lot of computing, a lot of figurizing, but it can be done. So that is what a cycle is. That's how you tell time, because it's the Earth's magnetic field that is recording everything. So as soon as it has recorded something, that means that thing is changing. So it comes back around to record it the next time. And as it does, it leaves the residue of the last time, and that's what adds on to it to create the next. So time works within that cycle. Time works within our Mother Earth's magnetic field. That's where our time works by. And this is identified within the living process of our mothers. So we all know that women, the life givers, have an internal clock. You know this, your rhythms. So it's much easier to see that rhythm from within an understanding of the moon. Try to understand all of these things when you're going by a Gregorian calendar where you have 12 months, but yet you have your moons 13 times within that 12 months. That does not compute. You can't reconcile that. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. So all of this just to identify that once we start once a person starts observing the moon cycles, starts making a slow adjustment to that, you will see how magically you are aligning with the cyclical movements of our Mother Earth, where you won't even have to have certain thoughts. Where if you are aligning, you're in motion with it, you won't have to think about it. Take, for instance, like if you're in motion with something, if you're just following along with something and this thing eats every day at the same time, well, you're just following along with that. So you'll just be naturally within that rhythm, and you'll be eating at that same time without you having to think about it. Otherwise, if you weren't following this thing, then on your own, you'll be thinking maybe I'm hungry. I don't know, maybe I'll eat later or whatever. Instead of you eating with the cycles, moving with the cycles. Okay, all of this being said, this is identifying of how time moves on, how things evolve within creation. It is a life giver force. It's a life giver cycle. So of course, within creation, the main role between the life givers and the life protectors, of course, is to balance out the life giver cycles. We are here as a complement to the women, the exact opposite of the God syndrome, the God lie, that God created Adam, and out of Adam's rib, basically, woman is an afterthought to keep man company. So when we think in that crazy lie mindset, then of course nothing is again within the natural cycles or natural rhythms. So you're living outside of natural. So everything that you're gonna do is unnatural. It's negative to what is natural. And so the balancing of this physical manifestation is that the men are to complement the women's direction, the messages that the women are receiving. And sometimes, well, not in this world, you know, with so-called modern science and everything else, a woman, a life giver might say all of a sudden to you something like, oh, I feel funny. And you might be doing something. And when she says that to you, you might not think anything. And you'll just keep doing whatever it is you're doing. Given in the light that she identified that she feels funny, like uncomfortable or something. The moment this is relayed, you stop. Stop right away. Because the life givers are constantly receiving all kinds of messages, messages that are immediate, messages that are long-term, messages that are like midterm, you know. So there is constant messages they're receiving, which is for the men to interpret or apply to our lives. So when we get this uncertain feeling or whatever, take a pause. Take a pause to observe, look around, even look up and see if an airplane is falling out of the sky or whatever. Take the time to give yourself the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, the benefit of the doubt to stop and look around and trust the what the life giver is sensing. And even if she doesn't know what she's sensing, if it's just like I don't know, we all get these feelings sometimes. There's an odd feeling today. I don't know what it is. It's just odd. So when there's that odd feeling, then it's like not necessarily unsettled, but it's like an unknown. So unknowns, when there is unknowns around us, you have to take the time to discover what these unknowns are. Otherwise, you might just, let's say, unknown. First time you ever seen a thorn tree, hey, what's that? Boom, put your finger on there, and then you got poison on your finger, and your finger's inflamed, and it hurts for a couple of days. So a proper balance in reading the messages that are received by the life givers. Now, all around the world, there are life givers in every strain of life. As you know, it's identified upon the earth, there is two polarities. So this tells us that on one side of the earth, there is one polarity different than the other side of the earth. I won't say positive or negative, it's just that it's a different polarity. Not to call them positives or negatives, it's different. We can't say who's the positive or the negative, the life giver or the life protector. No, that's not a positive or a negative. They complement each other, so they're both positive. It's just to identify that they are different polarities. For diversity's sake, we have to have this these opposite polarities. So within the opposite polarities of the life giver, upon our Mother Earth, we have seen that there is a corruption has been applied, that the women have been oppressed in the non-native world, where at the same time over here in Turtle Island, where the women were prospering, the women were flourishing, where freedom was the way of the people, where sausages, where women had the power and the authority to be able to stop an entire movement, an entire nation, a movement of people, that the women had the authority, the power to stop that or to initiate it. When you know that the people are the sons, the children of the mothers. The mother is the authority, and no matter what, no matter how big you get, no matter how big I get or how old I get, it doesn't matter. My mother is always my authority. I am never old enough to step outside of my mother's wisdom, my mother's knowledge, her authority. That would make me or put me outside of the loop of evolution. You would be basically like the equivalent of putting the cart before the horse. And when that happens, chaos ensues. So, as a result of these two different polarities and the corruption on the non-native side of the world, that the experience of the life giver in the non-native side has been a negative experience. Even though you might have different women at different points in times, like say maybe a queen or something, or somebody who's a millionaire, some woman today, a billionaire, an heiress or something, they might tell you, oh, they're having a very good life. In the non-native world, no woman is having a good life. No matter how much money, no matter how much of a kingdom she has built up, she is not having a good life because it is outside of the natural rhythms, the natural cycles of creation. This has caused people, of course, men, to dysfunction. They're not functioning as humans because men are not supposed to be violent. We're not supposed to be warring. This is the #1 corruption in the world, but yet all 8 billion people in the world all approve of war. They all approve of killing other human beings. All 8 billion people in the non-native world. Regardless of what you may think, you might say, if you're a non-native and you're seeing this, you might say, oh no, I'm against killing. Is that really true? Are you against killing? Prove that you are against killing. You will not be able to prove that you are against killing. You might say for your own self, believe me, I'm saying it, I'm against killing. Big goddamn deal. You're a part of killing. You're a part of an overall structure that does this as a living. You make a living killing things, killing people. And this behavior, of course, tears apart the human experience, which tears apart the life giver experience. And so tonight, it's been within this vein. We're always talking about the life givers anyways, but it seems like in the last couple of weeks, we've been in this particular vein of seeing a lot of negatives happen more and more around the world towards the life givers. And it's just becoming more predominant, more visible, more in your face, where maybe last year, I don't know, maybe you weren't seeing it. Maybe you were, but no matter what, I was seeing it last year. And I know that this year it's more of a degree of it more. It's worse, it's increased. So as a result of this, we have in both polarities, the life givers experiencing negative. How could this be? Think of this. If you had a flashlight and you got batteries in there and you got positive and negative, and the way that you put them in for it to work, how could it be that they would shift? How could they both of them shift to a point of where if one side was negative, well, now that side will be a positive, which would be a negative to the negative, and the other side would be a negative to the negative. They're both negative to where they can't even fulfill their role as to what they previously were. And so the outcome of these two trying to work together is just a mush. It's not it's nothing solid to it. So the life givers in the non-native world and the native world for the last 500 years, at least, have been experiencing turmoil, have been experiencing compromised human experience, where it's less than human, and that with each year that that negativity is there, it actually increases, because once you're on a slippery slope, you're not just hanging out there, you're falling, you're slipping, you're going deeper and deeper every second. And so this is what's happening to all of humanity as every time our Mother Earth's magnetic field comes, leaves the South Pole, travels around and records, it's recording negative. And so the next time it comes around, there's a negative on top of a negative, reducing the human experience. So it's just becoming negative, negative, negative. So something has to be done about this. And so, as you know, here, we're doing all kind of things, reaching out, starting dialogue, whatever. And some of you know some of the endeavors that we're doing. Well, there's a new thing that two of the life givers have started upon, to embark upon. And it's this thing that was identified as Sisters Across Waters, to talk about what the experience is, to share it with each other, to share the ugliness of what each other is experiencing, to share the beauty of what each other is experiencing, and in each other to find beauty, to where the life giver can help herself flourish once again within both polarities. So we're basically doing a troubleshooting of creation, and hopefully in this troubleshooting, we'll be able to find the solution to apply to each and every life giver in the world, and to thereby extrapolate that upon our Mother Earth, to be able to heal our Mother Earth. Because if the women, the individual life givers can be healed, then the more and more and more that are healed, then this is more of our Mother Earth that is being healed, more of her life force, her energy. Okay, so this is what it's going to be, the first we'll say like installment, this discussion. It's Sisters Across Waters, across the Great Waters. And like we said, at different points, you're not even going to know what you're discussing, and you might think, well, that's it so far for tonight, that's as far as we can go. Sometimes you might not know what has to be said, so it's a matter of just jumping into the ring and not knowing what it's all about and having to discover. So once you jump into the ring, you have to discover, what is this? What's the circumstances that I am in? What's the rules to this? What's the parameters? What's got to be done? You know, what's the goal? All of this. It's there waiting to be discovered for the life givers. Okay, so no need for me to say anything more. This is a discussion that's gonna just lead itself. So without any further ado, then who is heading up this conversation tonight is Wendy and Mary Claude. But it's not to say that it's exclusively them. They are working together to discover something, but it is a process for everybody to discover something. Okay, that's enough. I said enough. There you go. You don't have to know where to start. You don't have to know what to say. You just got to jump in there and say, let's do it. There you go. You know.
Okay, would you like me to start, or Mary Claude, would you like to say anything first?
I think this was a perfect introduction, but just to say, you know, we're so happy, Flying Star, our dear friend Wendy, she's the one that will be sharing tonight. So, and as we know, for the healing of the life givers, it has to be done collectively. So we really acknowledge also our Grandma Moon. Today we are in new moon phase. And, you know, I was reflecting on this today, you know, our Grandma Moon, she receives all the deoxygenated water and then brings back the healed water. And this is a lifelong process that Flying Star has been going on throughout her life, you know, receiving all of these genocidal attacks. And today we're really honored that she's bringing us back the findings and her incredible healing journey. So Thank you so much for being here.
Miigwech. I'd just like to introduce myself. Bonjour, Ani, Indimwe Muginug, Kibi Mashetanung Indishnakas, Mininug and Dodam, Skownan First Nation and Dunji. Greetings, hello, all of my relatives. My name is Flying Star. I'm turtle clad and I'm from Skownan First Nation. I am the great granddaughter of Marie, the granddaughter of Hilda and Evelyn, the daughter of Mary, the sister of Debbie, and the mother of Crystal. And I say to them till our eyes meet again, every sun and moon is a gift. Chi Miigwech. I'm very definitely humbled. I've been in prayer. I've offered my tobacco. I've asked, my family and spirit to be with me. I've asked Grandma Moon to guide me and to help me, to give me the strength. And I'm also carrying my eagle feather that I was gifted because it represents truth. And anything I say will be coming from my own personal truth. That's one of the things I know, that I only speak from what I know and what I have experienced. And I would just like to say that, I hope anything I say would be a medicine to someone else. And otherwise, there's no purpose for me even sharing. And it's also an opportunity. I thank you for the opening. Those were words that were heartfelt. As you know, I continue to learn every week. I consider myself a student. I am in no way an elder. I'm a helper. And that's how I see myself, a willing spirit that wants to help. And so I would just like to say that, I was born and raised in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And in 1965. And so that being 1965, it was a bit of a different time. It was also classified as the 60s scoop, which, to give a context of what was going on at that time. And today I say that, we would have, it's a miracle. Me and my siblings actually didn't get apprehended any earlier in those early days when we were with our parents, because we were left alone a lot. There was, a lot of drinking and neglect, and we should have been apprehended, but that never happened. But before I really start to get into everything, I just wanted to acknowledge my daughter, Crystal, Gentle Eagle, because it was her wish for me. She always said to me, "Mom, you need to tell your story. You need to talk about your story," because she said, she was proud of me. She says, "You're a survivor," and she always felt that I need to share what my life was, because my children are growing up very differently. They're two generations away from what I grew up with, and which is good. They're growing up in stability. They're growing up with loving parents who are taking care of them, and they have no wants. Actually, everything they need is provided for them, and they're secure and loved. And I'm so happy to see that, because that's a very different upbringing, that we had, as well, and even my children. Um, they grew up with a single parent for the most part. Um, but anyways, let me go back. I just wanted to acknowledge that because this gives me an opportunity to honor my daughter, and starting to tell my story. And so anyways, I'm um, I'm I'm one of 5 children that my mom and dad had together. My dad was married before my mom, and he had 8 children there. And my dad is considered half. His his dad was white, and his mother was Anishinaabe from Sandy Bay. And from what I learned is, um, I just learned this recently. Actually, I never knew how on earth a white person gets adopted on a native reserve. And I had no idea how that happened. But I've had a niece do some research, and she believes that my grandfather is the result of a priest impregnating an Indigenous girl. And so he was put up for adoption. Sutherland's adopted him in the Sandy Bay First Nation. So that's where I get my maiden name. But my grandfather was white. And so that makes a difference in the sense of giving context to my father. Um, because my father was racist, basically, um, towards natives, and yet his my mother was Anishinaabe. His first wife was white, so all those children are like 3/4 white and 1 part native. Whereas with us, 5 kids were 3/4 Anishinaabe, and that 1/4 white that comes from my grandfather. And so we're the opposites. And I can tell you that that first family disowned my father when he left his first wife. Um, I didn't grow up being around those siblings. They wanted nothing to do with us. We were dad's Indian kids, and they lived in the white world, and they all married white people. And so we were, always classified as the Indians. And I actually have 3 older sisters there that have never wanted anything to do with us. The boys are different. Um, they're more willing to actually get to know us, but we really don't, have anything to do with each other unless it's at a funeral or maybe, a wedding. But we're not close in any way. 3 of my brothers in that way did come to the funeral of my baby brother Glenn back in May. Um, so things like that. We have a distant relationship there. And but what's starting to change is um, the children of my dad's siblings. A lot of them married white people, and but it's their children that are wanting to discover their native identity, and that's what I'm starting to see. And a lot of them are connecting with me on Facebook. Um, so when I speak about my mom and dad, I want it to be very clear that I forgive them for everything. Of course, as a child, you don't understand the context of why people are the way they are. That's why I mentioned it, because, um, I could never understand, you know, obviously my dad had a lot of self-hate. They were born in a time where, to be called half breeds, um, um, my grandfather being white on the reserve, became a farmer, but, the politics that happens on native reserves, people didn't like how successful he was becoming. So they actually had to leave the reserve and they moved to Amrant to raise their family. And my dad was the oldest of 8 siblings. And so there's that. And they both spoke their language. Even though my grandfather was white, he was raised on the Sandy Bay Reserve, and he spoke the language fluently. And my grandparents taught their children. My dad knew how to speak fluently himself. And so for my mom, um, um, who's Anishinaabe from Skownan First Nation, it was the oldest. She had 2 younger brothers, and my grandparents, they all went to residential school. I can't speak about that history on my dad's side. I'm not sure about my grandmother Evelyn on that side. But I know that on my mother's side, there's definitely generations of residential school there. And my grandmother Hilda, she only had like a grade 3 education. I remember her saying she was allowed to leave because their family needed her to work at home. And I also know that my mother, all their siblings, they went to residential school. And back then you could go home on holidays, so that's how it was. My mother, from what I've been told, is that the nuns kind of took her under their wing, and she was kind of set apart from the other students, where she was in the nuns' quarters a lot in residential school because she did house cleaning for them. I think she made some money because my mom became known for, that I hear from her relatives, oh, your mom was so well dressed and, like so put together. And, she was that kind of a woman that really took care of herself. And that's how they describe her to me. And so she was, described as a very good looking woman. My mother was going to be a nun. I do know she had, I think she went up to grade 6 education, but she was going to be a nun. And so that says a lot about her, because she was a very devout Catholic her entire life. And that says a lot as to why she put up with the abuse that she did. And so she came to Winnipeg to go into the convent, and somehow before she got there, I don't know who it was. I've asked some people. They said, no, it wasn't me. I said, but someone took her to a bar, and that's where she met my dad, because my dad was an entertainer. He sang on the guitar all of his life. And there's some pictures of him in that way, but that was his whole life right up to the very end. I would describe that guitar almost as his cross. That's what meant the most to him in his life, and he never gave it up for anything or anybody. And that was his identity. And so that shaped my childhood. I grew up watching my parents get ready to go out, and then they would leave us alone all weekend. So that's really my earliest childhood memories, is that place that's all boarded up there now. It's only been, I took that picture just a few months ago when my stepdad was still out and about and we were driving around, and he took me, I asked him if we could go by a few places that I lived. And so I have one older brother. His name is one older brother that's a year and a half older than me. I'm the second. I'm the oldest daughter. Next in line is 4 years younger is my sister Debbie, and they're all 1 year apart. Debbie, Marvin, and Glenn. They're all 1 year apart. So my brother used to live there on College as well, because at the end of the street, at the end of that block, is there was a Catholic school, and across the back lane from that Catholic school was the Catholic church. So we both started school there, and I went to church every day as part of the curriculum. Eventually, maybe my brother was 6 when he got sent to go and live with my grandparents in Skownan. My brother was hard to handle. He had there was a lot of behavioral issues there, and but he ended up going to live in a loving home with my grandparents and being raised that way. Whereas me, I was left holding down everything, in the sense of, my earliest memories are at that home. And, so, when did I start school? 5, I was in kindergarten. I remember when my brother Glenn came home from the hospital. So, I must have been maybe 6 that I started to be left alone with the kids, and which were really young babies. And I didn't know how to cook. My mom had taught me how to open up a can of spaghetti, and we would eat that cold, because I didn't know how to use the stove. And when we ran out of that, we didn't have anything. And so there was a lot of times I would go to the upstairs neighbors and ask for food. And see, in that way, we're lucky we didn't get apprehended, because someone couldn't get away with that today. They would be reported right away. So there's things like that I did. My siblings were notorious for waking up in the middle of night and causing havoc, because there's a couple of memories there. Because what would happen is my parents would go out, then they would come home, and that's when the fighting would start. So we often, would be hiding under beds. Sometimes we had to run out of the house. I became very protective of my siblings. I've even tried running away with them several times. So I was definitely their protector. The child was taken right out of me. So I was greatly influenced by religion, because in my primary years, I was taught, from grade 5 to age 10 by nuns. So I know that really brainwashed me as well, in terms of what they kept telling me at that time was, you need to obey your parents. But my first concept of God was Jesus. And but it was fear based. It wasn't a loving God, it was a fear God. And to look at our home, we had nothing. There was nothing on the walls. You know, we lived in poverty, basically. My dad worked his whole life. He was a roofer, but all their money went to drinking. it's not like we had a lot of food or anything. I wasn't, you know, raised eating vegetables, that's for sure. Um, you know, but I do remember there being a big Jesus picture on the wall. And that actually becomes the first kind of spiritual memory that I have that I can connect to praying. And there was one time in the middle of the night, I was on my knees praying to this picture of Jesus for my parents to come home. And lo and behold, my parents came home and they weren't fighting. They were happy. They were smiling. They actually came home and they brought us little bags of chips. And I remember us being so happy and we were on the bed and, you know, um, and I remember that being a spiritual connection for me about praying. And, but anyways, my parents were fluent in their language, but they never taught us because they were completely brainwashed to convince that there was no longer any need for our language. And so they didn't even try to teach it to us. So that's a great loss there. And in terms of domestic violence, um, you know, I'm not sure what year. Um, it'll be worth me looking up after. But when the zero tolerance law came out um, for domestic violence, because my earliest childhood memories of even when the police did come, maybe neighbors called, I'm not sure, but I do remember police coming and never taking my dad because my dad could prove that he was someone who worked because he was a black tar roofer and he had tar on his boots. And so I just remember, you know, um, the script basically, you know, of him saying to the police, I work hard, I come home, I deserve this, I deserve that. She's no good. Just putting down my mom and, the cops agreeing with him and looking at him. Yeah, this man works, and he was never taken away. And so as well, that lasted for all of the years my mom and dad were together. My dad abused my mother, and I seen my mother lay down to abuse. She never fought back, and because she was being a good wife. All of those things that they say. Um, you know, she was less than her husband. She was lower than. She was there to serve. Um, got to remember she was going to be a nun. So she was completely devout and convinced. And that never changed in her lifetime at all. And, because eventually, I seen my mother as a very weak woman. As a teenager, I vowed to never be like my mother, that I would never be weak like my mother. Um, I remember saying those things, that I would never allow someone to abuse me. And, you know, I didn't understand my parents as a child. Um, I just felt the shame. Um, Children were, they were following what they were taught. And, children are not to be heard from. You don't have a say in anything. You do as you're told. And they ruled by the iron fist. My dad used a leather belt on us. My mother, she mostly used her hands. But we were disciplined. And so I really do have to mention this because this is something my younger siblings didn't get to experience. It was all put on me because I was the oldest. This is what I'm told. So anything that my younger siblings did wrong or got into trouble, I would get the beating for it. Because, I remember my dad saying, you should have stopped them. So, um, that's, I was the whip child that way. And, um, I can tell you that, a lot of times being a 6-year-old, being just a kid and being home with these babies all weekend, a lot of times I wanted to go out and play. So usually by Sunday, I'm leaving the house and leaving the kids alone. And I'm going out to look for friends to play because I remember I have childhood memories of my mom, I guess, them coming home drunk on the Sunday and me not there and her coming out to look for me. I'm at some friend's house and then just beating me up right there in the friend's home that, I had left those kids alone. Meanwhile, I'm just a kid, right? But that was the way it was. And so I guess you could say I was a child that, experienced physical abuse. Um, I never really acknowledged that in my life. Only this past year when my youngest grandchild turned 6, that triggered a lot of memories for me, being that age. And just like I shared with my daughter today, we had some nice talks. Um, Things don't come until we're ready. And I guess I was ready, finally ready, to look at that child within me and that child that was abused um, was never nurtured because none of us were, and because my parents couldn't give what they didn't have to give either, and that's something as an adult I understand. I certainly didn't then, um, but I guess to share one of the worst memories that I remember being um, in that home. It was one of these weekends um, that I guess we got a Christmas hamper. And of course, no one was home but us kids. And they had dropped off boxes and boxes of food. And so for us and my younger little siblings, like they were so happy, like, um, we had all this food, like, and probably candies and chocolates and whatever, I don't know. Um, but there happened to be flour. I don't know how many, maybe it was just one bag of flour. I don't know. Um, you know, I guess when I used to fall asleep, I was a heavy sleeper, so I wouldn't hear these kids when they woke up. But I just remember my youngest brother, Glenn, the one that passed away. He said to me, he woke me up and he said, Wendy, guess what? It's snowing in here, just like outside. So what they had done was spread the flour like all over everywhere, like everywhere, all over the floor. I don't know if it was on the furniture, but whatever it was, I spent the rest of the time trying to clean up flour. And, a kid trying to clean up flour, because for anybody to try to clean up flour, that's hard. It's so fine. And so whatever job I had done, it definitely was not good enough. And so when my parents came home, you know, um, you know, I just remember being dragged around the house by my hair. That's the hardest one. Sorry. Basically being dragged around the house by my hair. Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, look what, you know. And but I forgive my parents. I love them. I forgive them for everything. And that's just has to be said. This is a story that my youngest grandchildren haven't heard yet. Certainly my daughters, you know, they know my story. And that's why my daughter that died, she just wanted me to tell people. I don't know why. I think it's because I overcame so much in my life. And, you know, that's what I'm talking about, not having any safety, um, no protection. You know, which is so similar to a lot of people. Because even though that didn't happen to my younger siblings, which thank goodness, um, you know, they were so young when they didn't have parents. Because, you know, um, my mom and dad were together for 20 years. And by the time I was 13, I started to rebel, and we were still living in Winnipeg. My parents still drank every weekend, but instead of me staying home every weekend with the kids, I started to go out with my friends. And what did we do? We started drinking the same way that we were all raised. That's what we saw. And so immediately at age 13, we drank to get drunk. That's what my friends and I did. Um, so I had 2 years there before I went to residential school at age 15. I had 2 years there where I started to drink. That's when I first smoked weed. I think I tried acid that time. I started smoking. Um, I became I was a 35-year smoker. It's been 7 years I don't smoke now. But I was socialized in that. My grandchildren are not growing up in a house where people smoke. Um, you know, when I was born, smoking was allowed in hospitals and the offices everywhere. It was in all public places. It was the social norm to smoke. It's a very different thing today. And so I was a part of that socialization. So me and my friends, um, we were similar backgrounds, and we started to do that. Um, I got I started to skip out of school. A couple of us started to go shoplifting. I actually got caught once, and that ended my shoplifting career. Um, but anyways, my parents eventually split up. Um, when I was 14, my dad left my mom for yet another woman. And but my mom could not take that. She of course they drank all of her life, but now there was no way she can cope with having 4 children at home and be by herself. She started to drink. She could be gone for weeks. So what semblance of a family structure we did have was torn. Like there was really nothing left. You know, it was just a shell of a home. My mom could be gone for weeks. She eventually met her next partner, whom she married and stayed with the rest of her life. And so that now this takes me to being age 15, and now my parents have split up. My younger siblings are 11, 10, and 9. And so that's the last that they ever had parents. We all went to residential school in Dauphin. And I made it, that was another conscious choice when we make decisions in our life that change the impact of the direction of the way things are going to go. I decided to stay at that residential school because I could not leave my siblings there. I had enough money in my pocket somehow to get on a bus ticket to go to Winnipeg again. I could have left, but I didn't. I stayed. And even though, you know, we kind of all did our own thing at residential school, like my brothers were in a separate dorm. I was in a separate dorm. You know, sometimes we'd eat together in the hall, but everybody was basically, you know, just living their own lives individually. And my little brother, Glenn, was really, he had no raising whatsoever. He was so young, and he was left alone in that residential school. And I believe predators went after him, but he could never talk about it. And he would never say anything. He had no ability his whole life to speak about anything. And so all of those things died with my brother. My middle brother one time came to me for help, and he never did it again because of how badly I freaked out on the people that hurt him. That was the first time that I ever experienced adrenaline. And it's because my brother came to the girls' dorm where I was staying, and he's like, he couldn't even talk. He was crying so hard. He just couldn't even get it out, you know. And then he finally got it out. My sister and her friend had beat him up. And I just like, what? And the dorm lady, or I don't know what the hell they call them, she saw me, I guess, and she said, Wendy, take it easy. So I went marching to that dorm where they were. And I said, where is she? Where is she? And so they said, she's in the room. And so her and her friend were in a room there. And I just blacked out. All I could see was her, and everything was black all the way around. Because in my mind was, how could you? How could you? How could you hurt your brother that way? Like, all we have is each other. There's nobody for us. So, you know, I started to give her a licking. I'm kicking her in the ass. I'm giving her a licking. Don't you ever do that to your brother again. And, you know, the walls were like, you know, there's gaps in the walls. So there was all these little heads up there of the other kids in the, you know, because obviously it was loud and everybody's watching what's going on. And I kept saying, where's your friend? Where's your friend? She said, she's sitting right there, but I couldn't see. I was blacked out. And, you know, and then I looked at her, and then I don't know what I said to her, but, you know, I didn't touch her or anything like that. And then the next thing I did was I went and marched into the office of where their dorm parent was. Okay, that's what they were called, dorm parents. And I said, I want to know anything to do with my brothers and my sister. I want to know what's happening. And of course, nobody ever told me anything ever again. My brother often reminds me every now and then, that I had done that for him, because, but he said he never wanted to tell me again because he knew that, he was afraid of what I would do, yeah, how I would react. So nobody ever told me anything after that. Um, um, by the time, maybe a year later, they took my sister and didn't even tell us. She was taken out of their residential school, I believe, because again, another predator was after her, and she was going along with it. She was 12, and some older teenager was trying to date her, but somehow they got her out of there, and then she was put into foster care systems. Um, so it was just my brothers there left. But anyways, that's where I got pregnant when I was 16. My daughter's father is from Nelson House. Um, he was my first love. But it turns out I was just a pursuit, because everything changed when I became pregnant. And yeah, he just never really cared after that. And they eventually sent me to Winnipeg to a pregnant home for girls. It's called Villa Rosa. And I had my baby there when um, I was 17. And I knew that I was going to keep my baby. Other people there at that home gave away, put their babies up for adoption. But I always knew that I was going to keep my baby. And that was, there was never any other decision to be made. And even the social workers that, interviewed me there could see that in me, how mature I was for my age, because like I said, I was never a child. So I was a very mature person. I did not know how to be childlike. And um, so I eventually went, after having my baby, I went back to Skownan and lived with my grandparents' home. And this was my grandmother Hilda's. I brought home her first great grandchild. And that's where the name Danaku comes from, because um, those were very special, special months that first year living with my grandparents. I was never shamed by my grandparents for being pregnant. All they saw was the medicine, the blessing of them going to have a great grandchild. And I saw what it was supposed to be like, um, the love towards a baby, the happiness in the home, the way we were treated. When I got there, they had a room set up, crib, bags and bags of clothes that people had donated. They had set up a room for us. And it was probably, the most beautiful, special time that I had with my first baby, being with my grandparents that first year. Because after that first year, they sent me back to school, and my auntie kept my baby. And that's when I eventually, so where Donaku comes from is like my, a lot of the words that I can speak now in my language come from just being in the house with her for that year. Because one of the things I used to hear her all the time was a bin, we sent in anybody that came to the door. She said, sit down and eat. She fed everybody that came to her house. And so I picked up on these things. And one day I started to hear, like, what is she calling my girl? Like, she didn't say, oh, I'm calling her this. No, I had to actually figure out, what are you calling her? and she was calling her great grandchild. But so I said Duniku, like I said Duniku, but that is only the beginning of the word. It's not the full word. But after that day, that became her name. She took that, what I said, and she said, that's Danaku, that's going to be her name. So in essence, that was her first spirit name given to her by both me and her great grandmother. I just want to say right now, because I just want to say, if there's any questions that anybody wants to ask me, please interrupt me. I'm not comfortable just talking on and on here. But I don't want to get too long in one area. So if you have any questions, please, you can stop me at any time. I just want to, I really wanted to give that context, of religion, and my childhood, because I didn't grow up with self-worth. I grew up to be ashamed. I grew up to feel less than. And I received all of those messages from everywhere, from the schools, from my parents, from all of the violence that I saw, because it was not only my mother that was being abused, it was every single woman that I seen, like, that they were partying with. Their husbands also abused their women. And so I really believe that my mother was probably abused with all of us 5 children in the womb. Back then, it was sociable acceptable to see, a pregnant woman drink alcohol and smoke. There was no taboos of that back then. So how much my mother drank, I don't know. Just it was just a scary childhood. I had no trust in men. My brothers learned this behavior. They learned that male dominance is acceptable. Boys were separated from the girls in the sense of, especially me being the oldest, we had to do all of the housework, the cleaning and things like that. The boys got to go out and play. It was a very, very different treatment. And so therefore, my older brother being raised to be pampered, were completely different in every way, shape, or form. As far as you can get, were very, very different. And, that's important to say. But I want to talk a little bit about my daughter's father, because I met him when I was 18. This is when I was still living in Dauphin, going to school, because like I said, my grandparents wanted me to continue my education. But really it was, I went to school, but, me and my friends were partying, out there every weekend, and, getting high and drinking. And that's when my friend had a Volkswagen van. That Volkswagen van that we took a picture of this summer reminded me of that time. And actually, I sent that picture to my friend, because those were the great times that we have, like, that we share, like, before adulthood, took over, and we all split up in our lives. There was a couple of years there, where we were free, and we were, just partying and having fun. And, we went a lot of traveling in that van, that Volkswagen van. And then from there, he also had a Volkswagen Beetle Bug. So they tried to teach me to drive that time, but forget it. And so there was a lot of good times there. But I did meet my my second daughter's father in Dauphin, and we were together overall 3 years. He was my first common law, because after that year, that first year, well, that summer, now I took my baby to Dauphin. I didn't want to be separated from her anymore. So I tried to continue going to school and putting her in daycare. But now I'm with, you know, my so-called partner at that time. And um, he started to abuse me after a year. And which is kind of like I said, on a conscious level, when I was young, this is not going to happen to me. But on a deep subconscious level, um, when it did actually happen to me, I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to, um, nobody to tell, or, like family to say this happened to me, like take care of it. Like, you know, you know, you- so you kind of get stuck in the sense that you have nowhere to go anyways. And as to how, like, that age old, why does she stay? Why does she take that? And you know, because what happens with that is, um, the promises that they'll never do it again. And that, it becomes a really bad yin and yang thing that goes on in a domestic violence situation. And so I eventually became pregnant. That's when I was still in grade 11. So I didn't actually finish grade 11 because I was still trying to, but there was just too much abuse going on. He was cheating on me and all kinds of stuff. And here I have my little young girl. And yeah, it became a family abuse situation. I don't want to say too much because that's not my story to tell. But it's something that, you know, my family members had to carry all of her life. This abusive person was jealous of the child. And yeah, we were both abused. Um, I had to escape. And that's when I came back to Winnipeg. An agency out there helped me help me escape. And they put me up in a hotel, and they put me in touch with an agency here to try and help me because I was like in my last month of pregnancy, and with my second child. And I eventually got a place here, but I don't know how. He eventually came and was with me. I managed to find a home for us 3 days before I gave birth, so I could just move in there, get some food happening in the house, and then boom, I go in the hospital to have my baby. And so I come back home, and it was only within a month that I had a huge big black eye. And because he was starting to act up, like I had left him, I told him when I had left off, and that, I'm not going to raise my kids this way. This is how I grew up. I'm not going to raise my kids this way. And so when his behavior started up again, I had threatened to call the police, and that's when I got hit. and I was holding my baby at the time. And so it took me a little bit, but by the time my baby was 5 months old, um, I had escaped from that person for the last time. I went into a shelter here in Winnipeg, and that's where me and my two girls stayed for about 3 months until I got a place of my own. And I never did take him back. Um, he tried for many, many years, but no, it was over. And so that was my one common law abusive relationship. And after that, I lived alone with my girls for the longest time, a good 7 years, because I had boyfriends, but I would never introduce them to my children. I protected my children. I didn't want to introduce them to anybody unless it was going to be serious, that they were going to be around for a long time. I didn't want them to just, I didn't want a revolving door. So I kept guard with that. So for the longest time, it was always Wendy and the girls. And I eventually, I started to work when I was, I think I was 22 when I started my career. I've had a 30-year career. I count my education and my work in that number, because I was mostly a single working parent. And, those work years took me away from my children. And, they grew up with me hardly being around, in the sense of they grew up with mom was always at work. And my kids had to become very independent. And so my oldest daughter had a lot of responsibilities as well. I raised my children the same exact way that I was raised, but not as hard. One of the things that I made sure was my house was always going to be cupboards full. So whatever amount of money I had, like from the few times I was on welfare for shorts, when my kids were small, I would make sure that I shopped for the month, so that my children would never go without food. That's the one thing I provided, was shelter and food. And that was different already from my childhood as well. There was a rule of no drinking and partying in my home. They didn't grow up seeing alcohol. Um, I eventually took in my teenage brothers. Once they left residential schools, they came to live with me. So I was a young parent with my teenage brothers. So I had a lot of responsibility because, again, I did not have, I wasn't able to teach my brothers anything. All I could do was, again, give them a home, give them food. But, you know, I had to figure out everything on my own. I had to learn how to cook. I just everything in life. I had nobody to teach me, nothing. And I had nobody to help me if I didn't have a loaf of bread. Um, my parents never resumed their responsibility ever, not towards their children or their grandchildren. I took on that responsibility, and I carried that for a long time until my sister died. My home became where all of the dinners were. Again, we followed all the colonial holidays. Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all of those things were at my home. And because I initiated that, I cooked for them, for my family. I was the gathering place. Um, I did that for 15 years. And because there came a point when it stopped. And it was almost like I was defiant. I was a defiant person in my, like it was like I was white knuckling it through life. Um, I've always been in survival mode. Yeah, that still hasn't changed yet. Um, so all those years I was in survival mode because I was never taken care of. No one ever provided for me. No one ever protected me. I had to provide for myself. I tried to care for my siblings as best as I could. And that's why my girls think of my brothers as their brothers, because they were all raised together. And so I was a working parent. I never knew really what poverty was, in terms of raising my kids, because I had always worked. We were never rich, but I lived within our means. And it's not like we took vacations, but I always had money for whatever we needed. Um, I was always seen as strong by everybody. I remember my mom used to say, "You're so strong. You're so strong. I wish I could be like you." And she didn't know I was working not to be like her. Um, I was working to be the opposite of my mother. I saw my mother as weak at that time, because I didn't get to understand my mother until I went to university at age 40. I've had other education. I started off my career with Core Area Initiative when I was 22. Became a secretary. I got my GED at that time. My first job was with the federal government. I was working amongst architects and engineers. Talk about being out of place, to suddenly end up there having a federal job. I mean, I was so insecure at that time. Um, but that's where I'm saying is, um, my, and then I eventually, actually, let's talk about my son. When my youngest girl was 7, that's when I became pregnant with my son, and from a man that I was casually dating. Like I said, I never shacked up again. But I did have boyfriends. And so it was one of these boyfriends that I had been seeing for just under a year, that we would go out together every now and again. He had come over. Of course, my children had met him, but, never to stay or shack up or anything like that. It was really just a casual relationship. He was 10 years older than me. I was 27 at the time when I became pregnant with my son, my last baby. And he was 37, but he was a pipe carrier. Um, I say that because that relationship taught me it doesn't matter who it is or what they have, or that doesn't mean they're honest. I used to think that, someone who carries a pipe lives an honest life. How could you not? But it wasn't the case at all. So, you know, I don't put anybody anymore on a pedestal. I don't care who it is, they're a human being. And so I've learned that. So anyways, when I became pregnant, he completely walked away again. Right? So um I don't know what it is to be in a loving relationship where the father is there to witness his child being born, um to him to want to actually care for his child and raise them. No, it wasn't like that for me. And there's a sadness there. Um and really the loss is all theirs, but there was a sadness there, because I have three children by three different fathers, and it was really the middle one, Crystal's dad, that, of course he wanted to stay, but that was an abusive situation, not going to happen. And um so so now I get to my son's father. He's somebody that I met after my baby was 2 months old. My sister Debbie was still alive. She had come to Winnipeg and she wanted to go out. And so my son was 2 months. So this is my first time actually, to go out. And that's when I met, you know, um, the man I would eventually marry. And and he became the father to my son. And that's where my name Thomas comes from, because he is the one that I actually married. And he, mm, I guess overall, that relationship was about 3 years off and on. And uh, the marriage itself only lasted, maybe just over a year. We had the full wedding. He got down on his knees and he proposed in front of my girls. And so that's what made that breakup really hard, is because he had hurt my girls, he had hurt my kids. And something that I tried to protect them from their whole life was any kind of a temporary daddy situation. And because I always said, as long as they have me, that's consistent. They know that they'll always have me, and that's how I raised them, to know that they could always count on me. And so, but you know, just to all of my relationships were abusive, in different ways. They taught me different things. Like, of course, there was the one physical abusive relationship. The guy broke his hand hitting me on the head. Like, oh my gosh. But the other ones were psychological. Um, you know, putting me down and things like that. Um, um, Emotional, um, which are abuses as well. Anything that kind of chips away at a spirit is abuse. And so my relationships were that way, but I didn't stay in them. That's one thing my family knows. Um, my younger brother, says that to me every now and then. He reminds me, like he's so proud of me because of how independent I've been my whole life. I had to be. It's only in my later years that, no, hey, I need help. I don't want to do it all on my own anymore. I want to accept help. But back then, no, I was just determined. I don't need you, was my attitude. And And that's what my brother saw in my relationships. And I did tell him, I said, I gave many chances in my relationships. I says, but I will eventually make the right decision. And I've always done that. I've always taken the hard road, not the easy road. I may walk out that door with my heart in my hand, but I know that I'm doing the right thing because I will not stay in a situation that is not good. And I said this to my relationships. For some reason, they all tried to take me down, never tried to build me up. It was always a hardship, never something that added. It was always taking away. And till eventually, what broke up my marriage, I wasn't even married 3 months. I was still in that kind of honeymoon phase, where life is just great. And my husband at the time, just he had left school when he was 16. He became this drinker, working with his dad, working in construction. So by the time he met me, he was done with that life. And I had introduced him to culture and the powwow dancing trail, because that was how I showed. That was the one thing that I gave my girls was, like I said, because I had no ceremony. The only thing I saw here in the city of anything to represent Native was the powwows. So I started my kids dancing when they were small to give them a sense of identity. This is who you are. This is what, Natives look like. And so I'm the first in my family to even go towards anything Indigenous. And so that was the first way in which I showed my children. And we only went to traditional ones. We didn't go to these competition powwows. And enough that now today, my daughter can tell me the difference of what it felt like to go to a non-traditional powwow. There's a difference. So they were raised going to powwows. And so when my husband met me, he adopted that and he became a dancer. And he had stopped drinking and doing everything. And he was discovering his identity. I was going to Red River at that time. I was getting my business administration. He started because he was now going to pursue his education. And so now he's in a school environment. And I was only married 3 months though. And he started acting like he was a teenager. You know, when young boys see girls, I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, he went through that because I found a letter in his pocket when I was doing laundry. And again, it's only 3 months I was married. And he's writing this love note to this woman that sits in front of him in class. And he's going on and on about how beautiful she is and this and that and whatever. But he's married to a witch. He was putting me down in that letter. And anyways, it was devastating. It was shocking and it was devastating. And, again, it was a decision that needed to be made. Like, what do I do here? I chose to go on with the marriage because it had only been 3 months. And, he denied that it meant nothing, but whatever. So I decided to put it aside and give the best that I could to the marriage and continue on with it. And so by the end of that year, he held up an eagle feather, and he knows how much that means to me. He held it up and he said, "That letter that you found, like almost a year ago," he said, "every word is true." All the awful things that he talked about, he said, is what he feels. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like blew my mind. I took my rings off right there and I said, I don't know anybody that could be so mean and hurtful as to what you just did by holding an eagle feather and saying those things to me. I said, I can't stay married to you. This is over. And that was it. It was over. But it represented another failed relationship that wasn't true ever. I kind of went into a depression after that. I was very hurt, especially for my girls and my son, because now my son was very close to him. And I couldn't see him. I had to cut him off from seeing my son, like visiting. It was just too painful. I said, I just need some time. Like, I need some space that I'm not, so I don't have to see you or even talk to you right now. I said, it was just too hard. So in between there, my sister dies on top of it suddenly at age 29. And that felt like a child had died for me. And that's when I uprooted my whole life and I went and lived in the PA. I quit my job here. I took my kids up there, and that changed everything again. That was an emotional decision out of grief because me and my sister had talks. She was very protective of me as a younger sister because I lived in Winnipeg, and she always thought it was worse. But meanwhile, it was worse up there that I ended up finding out. Her whole life she was abused as well, domestic violence. Both her partners had committed suicide. She had 2 children. They're both orphans. Both their dads committed suicide, hung themselves. My sister had a very hard life, and she was a tough, tough woman because when her partner took her from Winnipeg, like my sister's a very beautiful woman, she had to fight like hell. Like, who's this outsider that they're all Cree, and here he brings an Anishinaabe and beautiful woman at that, and she had to fight. Everyone was trying to beat her up, like, and so she eventually became this tough, tough woman. And so is my mom that way. These were street fighters. I'm not that way. So, that strength comes out. That's where it's coming from. It's coming through them. Because they were very tough survivors. So anyways, long story short, I stayed out there for 8 months trying to take care of her baby. Her oldest son went to the grandparents right away. I was sick. I was living in a house where, I had no support. I didn't know anybody over there. I lasted 8 months. It was the biggest thing I had taken on. in terms of continuing to always want to take care of my family, always be the one that's there. And, you know, I was never Wendy as an individual. I was always this big sister. I was always, something else. I never knew anything about Wendy. And I eventually ended up leaving there and leaving the youngest grandchild with their family, his family out there. But what happened was the brothers got together. That first grandmother eventually took them. So they were together. It ended up in a good way, but it broke my heart to leave them. I felt like a failure, like I had failed my sister. But I came home a broken person because I was very sick there, just with the grief. And anyways, when I came home, I was 38. And for the very first time in my life is when I started my healing journey in terms of what is best for me now, not for everybody else. What is best for me now to take care of myself and my children. And that's when I invited Roger back into our lives to be my son's father. I said, "You're the only father that he's ever known." And I said, "I do not want to introduce him to anybody else." So I said, in that way, I invite you back into our life, but you have to promise me that you'll never hurt him or leave him, because he will never understand. He will never understand that. And so he promised. So I could put all of my hurt aside for the happiness of my son. I can do that every day of the week. And I made that decision. And so in that sense, we have been co-parenting ever since. We've never been together again. I told him eventually my understanding that I had come to, that he was not meant to be my husband, but it was meant to happen that way, because I would never allow just a boyfriend to be his father. So in that sense, I gifted him a child, but he also has my girls as well. And he takes all of my grandchildren as his own. And as it turns out, he's never had any children of his own. I'm not sure why that is. He's never been married, but he's had several common law relationships, but that's none of my business. So we co-parent today. I told him any relationship that you're in needs to understand that this is a co-parenting relationship. He did have one woman get jealous, that couldn't accept it. That's when he did hurt my son once. And that's when, after my daughter died and I was in my sickest year, that first year, he was after me to change my legal name. And I told him nicely about 2-3 times that that's an impossibility right now because of how sick I am. There's no way I have the energy to put into that, of all that, of what that's going to take. He wouldn't stop bothering me. And I finally had to tell him off. I said, I lost it. And because he had no compassion at all, he had lost his freaking mind. And he went and transferred reserves even to her reserve. He gave us 1 week notice that he was moving and he left. and apparently he's going to get married. Well, my son had no understanding of this whatsoever. That's the first time I ever saw my son cry. Because he heard him. He did the exact thing I asked that he never do. And anyways, he ended up coming back. It's all over, 5 months. But it's not the same. It'll never be the same in terms of any kind of level of trust. In the sense of it's already understood that when I pass, the decision maker for my son in legalities is going to be my daughter. Because if something happened once before, it could happen again. So I'll always protect my son. I just want to, I don't know if this is following any line here. But spirituality found its way into my life through dreams and visions. And again, I have no connection to ceremony people here. I've tried to go to a few places, but if it doesn't feel right to me, I don't belong. And that's just how it's gone. I received my first teaching when I was 21 in the city here. And I didn't know that teaching had set me up for the rest of my life, because I started following those 4 directions that day. And I was given my first vision when I left there to show me that what I had seen and felt was real. And this is who I am. The first time I smoked that pipe, the first time I smudged, and that first teaching that I received of the medicine wall teaching, it had set me up for the rest of my life, and I didn't even know it. I still live by it. And now I share it, though. I didn't share it with my girls. I didn't have the confidence. Who am I to even share a teaching with my girls? I tell them everything else in life. They know everything about what I went through here and what I went through there. But the spirituality aspect of it came later. And that's why today I can have a conversation with my daughter, as a matter of fact, who turns 40 tomorrow. We talked today, and she's looking forward to life beginning at 40, because she's heard me saying that I'm just coming into myself now. I've lived my whole life, in survival mode. And, I said these very words today. I may not have the riches of what people would describe as successful, of what non-native people would describe as success, owning a house, owning a vehicle, material things. I don't have any material things that I could say I own, just the clothes off my back. But I'm the very richest person in my life that I have ever been. And it's because I know who I am. I know where I come from. I know what I've survived. And I'm a very blessed woman to have the 3 children that I have, because I've always said that they saved my life. They gave me purpose and a reason to try to do better and to change things. And they blessed me with grandchildren. Um, you know, you know, which have been such great medicine to my life. Um, that childlike spirit gets to come out. I get to play. I've enjoyed every stage of their lives. My granddaughters, they're going to bless me with great grandchildren. I know that. I'm going to be blessed in that way. They may not know all of my story, but one day they'll listen to this and they're going to hear some of it. I wouldn't trade anything. I'm so proud to be Anishinaabe, connected to my ancestors. And, I haven't even talked about the last 10 years. I went through 5 surgeries. I almost died a few times. First, my daughter died at age 25 suddenly, my baby girl. That brought out a trauma inside my body that I was carrying, a disease, an autoimmune disease, which I didn't even know. And also, it brought out the discovery of kidney cancer, which I probably never would have known about for many, many years, because it was just starting, because they had to check me from head to toe what was wrong with me. And I really believe that my daughter, Crystal, saved my life. I believe she was given a choice. I really believe that she wanted me to live. And it is because of her dying that they discovered these things like cancer in me. So that's my belief. And I do not take that lightly. But I had to go through a hardship there. And I accept it. And I'm grateful for it. First it was this autoimmune disease. Right away, it was put in the hospital. I'm fighting for my life because the blood wouldn't stop. My family's running around, going to medicine people. What can we do? That's when my dad was still alive. And he's saying, he's yelling at my older brother, go and see a medicine man. Somebody did something to her, because I was in the 6th day of my blood just not stopping. I was losing blood, and they're pumping me up with blood transfusions. And so that's the beginning of a cycle that lasted a very long time. I've had many blood transfusions, and because I still have this disease, it's a blood disorder, and they say it's uncurable. And it's what caused all of the other things to happen to me, they said. First, they took out my spleen. Then I had gallstone attack. They did a procedure for that, emergency. Then they took out my gallbladder. What was next? Blood clots. I had major blood clots in both my legs and one in my heart. And I almost lost my foot that time, they said. I had a 30% chance of losing it. That's when I had to learn how to walk all over again. That's when I went through extreme pain for 10 days in the hospital. I was blowing out just like when a woman goes through labor, pregnancy, to blow out the pain. I was doing that around the clock for 10 days. What the little amount of pain relief they were giving me would last 2 hours. Then I would be blowing out pain for the next 2 hours because I was allowed that medication every 4 hours. And then unless there was a nurse shift change, I could wait 6 hours before I would get pain relief again. And so I really suffered in pain. And there's a connection there. I ended up having the vision, and that's where I have a connection to wolves. Wolves came to me. And if you come into my home, you'll see a few furs, and I'm surrounded by wolves because they protect me. And I've had many visions and dreams in my life that are spiritual. I really won't get into all of them. I'd rather share them with you personally, those things. I do want to share one picture though, Marie Claude, of the women, the grandmothers walking up a hill.
Oh, yeah.
When I was young, a young mother with my two girls. My grandmother had passed young. She was 66 when she passed away. My grandpa was 72. And she came to me in a vision. This one was a dream though, but spiritual. And that's how I saw her in that picture. Grandmothers walking up that hill in that line. I saved it from your Facebook page when I saw this on your page, Stuart. And because my grandmother was in that line and she was in buckskin, it was all grandmothers. And when I saw her, I wanted to go and walk with her. And I had my two girls with me. And I had one on my back and one by my side. And I'm struggling to walk with the grandmothers. I couldn't keep up. And so suddenly a man came from the side and offered me the pipe. But because my hands are full, he put it up to my lips, the peace pipe. And I smoked from it. And I always knew that I was given strength. And then all of a sudden I could walk, no problem, with my girl on my back and the other one on the side. And it showed me that that's what I needed in my life, that was going to give me strength to take care of my children. It didn't mean I was a pipe carrier because I didn't take it with my hands at that time. I smoked from it. So I never went out and tried to pursue being a pipe carrier. I didn't see it like that. I saw it that to be strong, I needed that in my life. And my last common law relationship was, my granddaughter is 19. I was with him when she was a baby. So, but by the time she was 2, I was no longer with him. So I'm going to say my last relationship was 18 years ago. My last heartbreak. That relationship only lasted again about 4 years. It was a common law relationship. I told him when he asked me to move in with him, because I had always kept a home with my children. I said, you need to be sure and know what you're asking. You're not just taking in a girlfriend, you're taking in a family. You want me to live with you, it's going to be as your wife. That's how it needs to be. I'm not just someone you're shacking up with. This is not Playhouse. I'm a mother. I have children. And I said, you're asking me to give up my home and to come live with you. Anyways, that promise was never kept. Was there a purpose of me being with him? Yes. I was showed in a vision years before that I would be with him. I took his hand, but it didn't mean forever. I eventually took my heart in hand and I said, I have to do the right thing. This is not healthy. I need to, this is not how I'm going to live. Like I said, I give chances and I give chances, but if someone's not willing to grow or heal, there's nothing you can do. And I had to walk away. But I had a broken heart, because, but this is the time when I made a decision to look at my own self in terms of the men I was choosing, because they were all similar. They were all non-committal. They all had some form of abuse towards women. I chose men like my dad. These men had a facade about them, just like my dad. My dad had a public image, completely different in private. And these men were like that. It was for show. I don't know, swagger. I don't know. Stupid shit anyways, that I would not fall for now. I would not fall for that now. I'm happy to say it's a beautiful place to be. To see someone like that coming a mile away, I wouldn't fall for it now. It's not what someone says, it's what someone does. And we can be fooled by words. You got to look at how they live and who they are. And so in the process, I've been a grandmother all these years. I've been healing. As I heal, the child within me comes out. My mother once told me she got the name Wendy from the Peter Pan story. And it's so funny because my name is Flying Star. So Wendy in the Peter Pan story was taught to fly. And I really feel like my life is just starting. One of the things that I'm happy to say that I've seen in my girls, I've seen my girls be loved by the men that they're with. My youngest girl, Crystal, she said to me, Mom, I don't think you've ever been loved. I said, I think you're right. But I love myself. I love my family. And I think I'm just so excited about life. I'm deeply rooted in who I am. I believe I was tested. I think I've shared with some of you that I went through a period of crying. I couldn't talk for like 7 years. I cried and I cried and I cried, and I can't even tell you. It's not like it's like, oh, boo-hoo, me. No, I just cried. I cried buckets. And maybe that's because we don't cry. I don't know, but it came out. I'm someone who knows what dark depression is. I would be able to sit with someone. I know what it is poverty is now. I know how hard it is to survive on just one little income they give people here. I don't know how. I wouldn't be able to survive without my son. It takes two of our incomes. And oh, and the greatest blessing of all is my son that I get to learn from, because he's always going to be, oh, thank you for showing that picture. That's actually when we started walking every day outside during COVID first shutdown. It was just me and him at home. And my son's a gamer, like every other young guy is these days. And it's the world we live in nowadays. And my son's all about that, the games and the movies and what have you. So when it came to lockdown, I said, no, you're not going to be sitting here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So it was my mission. And we started walking outside every day. And this is at Kildonan Park. And this is at the 2-week mark. We had been walking by this tree for a good couple of weeks. And finally, he just stopped and stood there and waited for me. And because I'm always like a block behind him. And I'm like, wow, really? Are you serious? Been walking by this tree for 2 weeks, didn't even notice it, because it's the largest one there. It's the oldest one there. And it's things like that. Like my son notices everything. If he comes home and if there's one little thing I've maybe adjusted or moved or put up a painting or what have you, he notices it. He notices absolutely everything. And my son is a childlike spirit, and he's an innocent, and so lucky. He's taught me patience. He changed me as a person, as a parent. It's night and day the way my girls were raised. I have to communicate for the first time, which was not how my girls were raised. It was, you do as I say, and that's it. There's no discussion. That's how I was raised. My son changed all of that for me, and that's been the biggest medicine to my life. I had to learn to explain things, communicate, have patience, and also be childlike. I get to live in his world every day. That's the real world as far as I'm concerned. And it's like he's almost like my sabe, what they call that. Like the 7 teachings that we have. There's an animal, like wolf represents humility. The eagle represents truth. And honesty is represented by the sabe, which is also called Bigfoot, Sasquatch, that spirit. And he's like my sabe because he's honest. And he keeps it real for me. And his spirit name is Arrow. And that's how I'm transitioning now. I told my girl I'm going to get all my grandchildren's spirit names translated. And I'm going to start referring to everybody in their true name. And so we're continue to decolonize. And I'm a very blessed person. I have nothing but hope. I accept the responsibility that I have to my grandchildren and those yet beneath the earth. I'm here for them. I'm here and I have the support of all those family members I lost. They give me the strength that I need. I feel my brother with the wind when he's around me. That's my brother because of how we set him off. And that's one thing, is I have a lot of strength behind me in everything that I do. I know that I'm very much protected in that way. I have no fear whatsoever. I fear nobody, nothing. I have so much strength because of where it comes from. I love who I am today. I would never allow anybody to abuse me. But I also have love to give. Will I experience that in this lifetime? Maybe, maybe not. And that's okay. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my life. In some ways, there's things that are coming that I couldn't even have imagined. And I share this with my family. They're excited for me. They're happy for me because they know where I come from. I'm living in spirit is another word I said to my daughter today. I'm living in spirit. Where it guides me, I don't know, but I'm going to follow and listen to spirit. And she wants the very same thing. She's finally ready. And we were talking about it. She'll be doing her first vision quest and fasting this summer, come June. I've had hard relationships with my daughters. It hasn't been easy. There's been a lot of sadness and misunderstandings. But we're finding a good place. We've had a lot of trauma. And we're going to have more. My relatives are dying young. And I know I'm going to see a lot more of that. And people think it's normal to die at 65. That's too young to me. Realistically, I hate to say it, but whatever. I mean, I turned another year older. And the thing is, I don't feel my age at all because I feel like I kind of lost some time there, having to deal with so many kind of hard lessons and my medical issues. And I really believe that I'm just starting my new life. If I look at the medicine will, and I've said this to my oldest granddaughter, she if we look at infancy, adolescence, adulthood, and then elder, well, she's just at the beginning of entering her adult phase of life. Her parents are full into it, at the tail end of it. And I'm just at the beginning of entering that elder phase of life, but I'm not an elder. I'm just a baby. I'm just a toddler. And I see myself living, if I keep up, exercising and I work for it, I know that I can squeeze out a good, healthy, 25 years. I could push it to 90 if I want. But being strong though. And, but we got to work for that. And that's what I want. in that last relationship, when it ended about 2 weeks, because I did have a broken heart. I was sad. My grandmother Hilda came to me again, and I'm going to end it off here with this story. She showed me a scroll of my life, and I communicated with her telepathically. She was over my shoulder, and she had a scroll of my life. And of course, the future was blacked out, but I could see everything up to that point. That was every broken relationship, everything in my life up to that point, residential school, you know, my whole life up to that point was shown to me. And it was a little bit, I would say, what was it, 60-40? Was it 40% blocked out? Or was it I had lived 50%? I mean, 40% already, something like that. But I knew that I was going to live to be old. And having shared this with my children, there are times in the hospital when things got iffy, she would remind me of that. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to be old, you know, and then, you know, all the worries would go away. But anyways, what she had done to me was to show me that even that relationship was part of it. It was meant to be ended at this time. And so I didn't stay in heartbreak. The next day I was okay because I had complete acceptance. Of course, I didn't see the future. It was blacked out. All I could take from it was that I was going to be old. I was going to live to be old. I wasn't going to be 100, but I was going to be old. And I accepted everything. I told her, yes, I accept everything. Everything. And so I accept everything that has happened to me. I don't feel sorry for myself in any way, shape, or form. But don't ever wish to be me. That's one thing my older brother had right when I was in a car with him for 4 hours. He looks at my life and he says, you know, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, what you've been through. I wouldn't wish it. And I said, you're right, my brother, because what doesn't kill you does make you stronger. And I even said this to my girl today. I said it might have looked kind of iffy there in this last decade of what I've been through on the outside. Maybe it looked like that was a person that had given up. I said, but I was just coping. I was just surviving. And because there was 5 years there, I wasn't really living. That's when my son gained 100 pounds because I wasn't even cooking. I was just in bed a lot, you know, bedridden. You know, it was just a daily survival. I was not connected in any way. It was gone. I wasn't there. But when I did start to work, that was in 2017, like I shared. That was at the 5-year mark. I put my tobacco down. I said, I will give everything. I will do everything. And I will share everything. And I'll work. And that's what I've been doing. And I thank you because I've honored my daughter tonight by sharing a little bit of my story. of course, there's so many stories that could be expanded. That's not going to happen here. I think I will write that book. I want to put, because I want to put context of colonization in my book. I want to add those social policies of assimilation here and there where it affects what's going on in my life at the time. And I want to bridge those two gaps. And so that's probably where I'll do it. But in the meantime, I'm very grateful for everything. And I'm grateful, as you guys know, for meeting all of you. I consider you all my friends. I consider you my spiritual family. I've shared with Mary Claude, especially. I believe a little bit with you all on the Zoom when I shared my experience being at the recital. I wasn't there to talk about myself. I shared a little bit of my heavy heart when I got there. Because we had gone through this displacement, with my youngest brother dying suddenly. And that had a ripple effect. And, but I know they're with me. And I know it's going to be a very short time that we'll be together again. Our time here is not long. It's short. It's short. This is nothing. I know that. And we take it too damn seriously, our own selves. And what really helps me and gives me strength is doing something for somebody else. It makes me feel so good, especially when I can gift a person. It makes me feel so good. And I was sharing that with my girl. We were given everything we need, all the medicines, everything that we need to live a good life. And it's free. And anybody can find it. Just go outside, look up, say hi, go hug a tree. Do you know how many times I've hugged a tree just to get a hug? That's my friends. I'm so happy when I go outside because I became connected. And I lived disconnected most of my life. The great love I have now for everything around me. That's the love I never received. And I'm getting it now. And that's why my time there was so special, because it was like nurturing. It was a caring. And like my son's going to be 30. And I never had a break like that before. Like to not cook. Oh my gosh. Like I know that that's not reality, but I just want to go back to that playtime so often, and I know it's not a reality. That was really hard to get my feet back on the ground when I came home. I'm going to tell you, took me a couple of months. I had the best time in my life. I have a very different perspective now, having sat in the recital for 22 days and sleeping under the pines for 36 nights. The full moon ceremonies I participated in, the new moon ceremonies, beautiful. My time there represents the beginning of my new life. This new life that is awakened who gives no apologies. He's not going to hide anything, who lives in spirit and will follow spirit. And I just want to live life to the fullest. And I want to show my grandchildren that you can do that. And I definitely want to give hope to anyone out there. If you're not connected to, you feel you have no connection to spirituality, and how can I learn? All you got to do is ask. Put some tobacco down. I know how expensive tobacco is, even just a pinch. I ask people that have cigarettes because I can't afford to buy tobacco all the time. I say I take their cigarettes. So, and when I'm outside, like I take that paper off and I offer that tobacco. So you use what you have, and there's always a way, and the right people will come into your life, and it'll find you if you want it. And yeah, I'm going to just leave it there. Thank you so much for listening. And not one of you's interrupted me. You're supposed to stop me. Miigwech.
We're not supposed to stop you. We're supposed to let you let it all out in the way that you want.
Miigwech.
This is what was said today, of that the life givers have to be free to flower the way that they are supposed to. Not gonna say anything here except that for tonight, that's it. We're not gonna say anything else. We're not gonna do anything else. We're not gonna have no questions. If anybody has questions, keep it in your mind. And next Saturday when we come back, it will be up to you, Wendy. If you want to continue, if there's something that you remember that you left out, you know, like over the week, you'll probably remember that, oh, I should have said this or that. So that's where we're going to continue next Saturday. There's no limit to this. There's no set schedule to it. This is not anything that has been done before. I mean, people have always, told their stories, but we've never gone to this level before. So it will happen how you feel comfortable. So all I'm going to do now is everything that you said. Just reflect upon it. And I'll do this for you. Yo wene ha, 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 yo wene ha. Yo wene ya, 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 yo wene ya. Oh, we away, ya, yo, wene, ya, yo, wene, ya, wene, ya, yo, wene, ya, yo, wene, ya, yo, wene, ya, yo, wene, ya. Yo wene ya, yo wene ya, yo wene ya, yo wene ya, Yowene, 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 Iowenea, 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 Oh, you kiat again, ha, yeti sot the gun han, no the headstone, I gonna go rio that the hawakwe. Dam dawe oron headsera, gazet stasera, ne gunungwe. Dam dawe oron headsera, ne a guego on a go to on a rasera go on escana. Dam dawe oron headsera, ne gazet stasera, ne gunungwe. When we were listening to you speak, for myself, I see your story in all of our people. Whether it is old women, old men, young girls, young boys, and everyone in between. I see your story in all our people. I feel you in everything that our people are. Everything that we have experienced, and we identify the spiritual, physical, spatial displacement syndrome. And we can see that this is what our lives have been riddled with. You are, of course, a very strong person. It is a very different path than anyone else on earth that you or any of our people have to walk. Everyone else on earth, they're not walking this path of humanity. Everyone else on earth is part of what puts the pressure upon you, forcing you to walk that path. This pressure from all the people in the world that have come here to our home, in your lifetime, it looks very bad. But over the generations, your lifetime is the lifetime that changes things from the previous generations to the forever, where it looks like, and when we look around us in some of our people, it looks like we have disappeared. It looks like it's all gone. Of course, it's not. You are the proof of it. All of our people are resilient. Many of our people have, we may think, fallen by the wayside. They may have succumbed. It's not this way. Not that way at all. We are looking only through the eyes of the 60, 70 years that we are alive. We are not looking through the continuum of the past, the present,
and our face is yet beneath the earth. When we look through those eyes, we can see the importance of all the pressures you have been put under, so that out of all of that pressure comes the diamond that will shine. And this is what is happening. The diamond is shining. The true spirit is coming through, shining. And it's going to shine its light. The whole world will see that light. The whole world will follow that light, because that light is truth. And the only place that the whole world can find truth is where the pressure is applied. Because in the bigness of things, when our mother goes to the doctor is going to apply pressure and ask her, does it hurt here? And she's going to respond. That's what you are. You are responding. You are speaking our mother's voice. You are conveying that. And so you are the healing of our mother. We may not see it, you may not see it, or even believe it in your lifetime, because of, some of us get dealt some very bad cards in our life. Some of us just get a lousy hand. But that's where the strength shines through. In your story, which I know we're not finished hearing yet, and we're not finished learning from yet. But in that story, I know, because I've seen it already, that regardless of whatever it is that has happened to you, you are a giver. And the people who give under so much pressure have nothing to give except love, nothing to give except truth, the truth of what they have endured, the truth of what evolves in us through having those experiences. Not what evolves in just that one person, but what evolves in us collectively. And so we give thanks that we have come to a new, whatever we identify this process as. It's a new thing that we have not done. It's identified as Sisters Across Waters, because it is going to be, after your story, then it's going to be the other side story, from that other side of what we see. So as this process goes on, it might get ugly, it might dig up some ugly things within us, it might create some tensions, and we have to remember that why this is being done, that we are confronting things that other people are not confronting. We are addressing behavioral patterns within society, not for the purpose of just so that we can identify them, so that we can deal with them, so that we can understand how to put behaviors behind us in the way that you have done, and to use the example as, I'm not going to be this way. I'm not going to do this to my children. I'm going to show my children the proper way. So we have a light on the horizon, and that light is you. You are that diamond shining. And we are very happy to know you, because since day one, since we had the first physical contact with you, the only thing that we have seen of you is that you are giving. You are the giver. In this world, as we know, there are so few who are givers. Everyone is takers. Take, take, take. No one even wants to reciprocate an action back, to give even just something that might be comparable, that might weigh out in the balance. So this is when we think of the rebirth, the birthing process. And like we said, when we started at the midwinter, we might not be able to talk each time about the rebirth process, about what's happening in the gestation of a child, but where we are right now in the gestation of the child since the midwinter is where the umbilical cord is forming. We have to think, what does this mean? Let's put this template over your life The umbilical cord is just forming right now. The life has started a couple of moons ago. So for a couple of moons, life has been there. You know, even though it's still within the loving arms of the mother in her womb, that the child, the baby, the life is still alone because the umbilical cord is not yet formed. You have been alone. You've gone through all of this craziness that you have told us. You've experienced it. You've been on your own. But now you are at rebirth. You are coming into something new. You are making that connection right there, like in that image. The umbilical cord is being rebuilt for you. And yes, it is true. You are younger. And you will be younger. And you will get younger and younger. Because this is the path. Because as we get old, we know that what happens next is we get recycled. And when we're recycled, we don't come back as old women and old men. We come back as fresh-born babies, fresh to start again with the world that we have created. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of listening to do to your wisdom, to what you have seen on your path and what the majority of our people have seen on their path. We have a lot of learning to do in order for us to evolve, in order for us to get through this thing that has been in our lives for the last 500 years. We are getting through it. The ones that came here think that they have conquered us. They even say that, hey, once you're conquered, you know. But the reality is, they are conquered. They have conquered themselves and left us standing. We are the last people standing. Everyone else has conquered themselves through their colonial mindsets, through what they choose to believe, what they choose to stay holding on to, even knowing that it is certain death for them. And so we are the fortunate. You are truly the fortunate. It's in the small picture of just your life, these are some terrible things. But in the big picture of your continuum, these are some amazing things, some amazing hurdles, mountains that you are climbing over, that you are overcoming. And in the small time, it may be a hurtful thing. It may be painful that in your journey, it seems like you had to create this life and this life had to step forward to pull itself away from you to save you. And it may be painful to see that this is, or to think that this is what has happened with your daughter. But in the continuum, in our lines, in your bloodline, that's something from the past, reaching into your present to save you, to heal you. Your daughter was your ancestor, coming from the past to save you, to guide you, to redirect you, maybe in that last moment where if you did not, in that last instance, have her redirection upon you, where you might not even be here right now with us. And so we're all grateful. Each of us, we have amazing experiences. We are the evolution. We are what's happening. Everyone else is the dead skin that is being shed. So we must look at what is the continuum, what we are a part of. Like we have identified, when that dead skin is shed, vibrancy returns to the body like never before. Even on the mind, if the dead skin is there still on the body and the body wants to expand, the dead skin is restricting it. And that will be a stress on the mind, restricting the mind, putting undue stress and whatever on the individual mind. But you are not an individual. You are a part of the people. And the people are endless. No matter how long the white man is here with his death and destruction, he will never conquer. He will only conquer himself. He has already lost himself in his own greatness that he has glorified himself in. So we are dealing with the reality. We will put it all back together based on the continuum that we all come from. We each have a thread within that DNA. And no, again, no matter how long that white man is here, it doesn't matter. He is only fooling himself. We, no matter what, no matter how much he comes here to distort this picture, we will only make that picture more beautiful every time he tries to destroy it. He only makes you stronger. And stronger in this light is beauty, because shining through this garbage is what will lead the rest of the world to peace, to truth. And standing there behind that light is going to be our mothers. That's your continuum. That's the beauty that you have to thank your daughter for, that you will be the one standing there. She makes it so. And so we give thanks tonight for whatever it is that happened here. We're grateful. We're grateful in the way that you have given of yourself in your story tonight to share in depth in how you have, because it teaches us all. We all learned something. We were all targeted in different ways for different reasons. So you felt it differently than what I did, differently than what my brother has, differently than what everyone else has. So our stories together is the roadmap, the way home. It's the way home. We are discovering the way back home. So now we'll go on. Ayuki again, Hayati Sotagunha. Again, Damdawi. When I say Damdawi, I don't Hetsra, Gazatstasra Naganungwe. Damdawi, this is bring back. Ayuki again, help us, Damdawi, to bring back Gazatstasra Naganungwe, the true power, Adon Hetsra, the true spirit of the woman's power. And so this is what we identify. To our ancestors, Ayukiat Tagenha, help us, Damdawe Aron Hetsera, to return the true spirit of our mothers, of the continuum, not the power that the individual mother or woman wants or thinks that should be this way, but the true power. We ask our mother to flourish through us. We are strong. We stand in the line of our mother. Everyone else has abandoned her. You are strong. Stay standing with your mother. This will give everyone else the strength. You will guide in your adherence to our mother's law. So now we'll go to everybody. This is a collective evolution that we have gone through tonight. All of you, anybody, whether you are here or if you're going to listen to this at some other time, even 20 years in the future, if you're hearing this, you are benefiting from the story that is revealed to you tonight. You know something now that you never knew. And when you know something that you never knew, that means your knowledge is expanding. So we're very grateful. And we give thanks. Nyawagoa. Danzijadatka, Sasudios, Onagiwahi. Nyawagoa, everybody.
Now we'll go. See ya. Be great.
Love you. Love you.
Love you. Love you, Elsa.
Mm.